So thanks. Okay, I'm going to stand next to the microphone, but I don't want to stand behind the podium because I find that then you only get to see like this, maybe this much of me. So I'm going to go ahead and stand right here. That's okay. I'm really excited to be here today because I loved all the different talks about passion. I mean, it's a great way to start the day because it's really, passion is something that I think of as something that summons energy. No matter what it is that you're passionate about, the way that you know what your passion is when you feel that energy of keeping on doing what you're doing, or you feel the energy of persisting even when you're tired. And ultimately, I think Sana wanted to start out with that because that is what gives us the energy to do what it is that we are here to do. And so one of the things I want to ask everyone here is, how many people here want to be inspiring leaders? I feel like that's why you're all here. You're all change makers. You're all here because you have some idea that you know can impact a number, maybe 1 million of people. And how many of you want to be an inspiring leader who's able to motivate your team to give it their all to back your vision, or move customers to fall in love with your product? Yeah. And so one of the things that I'll be talking about today is really how to leverage your passion to build that following. Because no doubt, there are a number of superheroes with amazing superpowers here in this room. But eventually, what your goal is to build a tribe, build a movement behind that cause, that product, that change that you want to see happen in the world. And your passion is going to be the thing that summons the energy that allows you to do that. So here I'm the last speaker in the passion track. And I deal with passion a lot. So as was graciously introduced beforehand, I work with type A, usually very analytical individuals, in order to find a way so that they can maximize their contribution by aligning what it is that they do with what they are passionate about. And it's interesting because I find that a lot of type A, really analytical people tend to think a lot about the what. What do I need to do? What do I need to do next? What is it that I'm here to do? Where behind every what, or I think as one of the earlier speakers said, beneath every passion there's something else. Behind every what is something that you want to feel. And so as you're thinking about how is it that I build this tribe, how is it that I move my team members, or how is it that I engage customers, I'm going to encourage you to think not just about what you want them to do, but how is it that you want them to feel? How is it that you want them to feel with such passion, such energy, such a strong feeling that summons this energy to take action, to do something, to follow you? And so basically I'm going to cover 3 steps today on how you can use your passion and see it in others to move them to follow you on whatever path you're on. But first I just want to talk a little bit about my story and how I came to do this type of work, basically. I get the question a lot, how did you come to do this work? How did you come to coach type A professionals around aligning what they want to do with what their passion is? And it's interesting because this is something that I never foresaw myself doing, like 10 years ago when I graduated from school. A little bit of background, I have an engineering background in industrial engineering, which makes me a lover of engineering of efficiency and optimization. And so my passion is driven by a value for wanting the best in what we do, the best for others, and also in wanting to help people. And over the past 10 years, I did a number of different things. Started out in management consulting, went into brand management, went to business school, wanted to do more cause-related work, and so that's the point at which I went into nonprofit for a while. But I realized that even as an engineer or a scientist of process and optimization, ultimately the best way to optimize what people give in to their work is to focus on people. To focus on people, focus on what they're passionate about, and how do you align that with your cause. And it's interesting because when I started my business, I immediately defaulted to this type A, oh, what is it that I do? What is it that I do? I help type A folks understand what is it that they want by using decision engineering and decision analysis. It's a whole lot of what? And raise your hand if that kind of went over your head. Yeah. What I found that when I talked to people, when people really leaned in, the points at which people really got engaged, the point at which people really wanted to work with me or follow me on this cause, was when I talked about how I felt while doing this work. Or when I talked about the emotional journey that I've seen my clients go through. Talking about the feeling of being a type A person, having always had a plan, but feeling lost. Because you did everything you were supposed to do, but still something wasn't sticking. Or feeling like you didn't have, feeling the guilt of being in a position where you looked successful from the outside, but didn't feel it on the inside. And feeling guilty about, why am I not happy? Shouldn't I be happy? Why am I not happy? And then talking about the transformation from feeling that way to feeling really grounded in what they wanted. Feeling very aligned with what they did. Feeling like there was meaning in what they were doing. And it's interesting because even though eventually they might ask me about the how and the what, it's that feeling that they connected to. Ultimately, like when we talk about what's, a lot of it is in the brain, but humans connect. Like the definition of empathy is ultimately the recognition of emotion in another person. And so really the key to building a following or to enlisting people to your cause is to understand how is it that you feel when you're living your passion, and how is it that you want them to feel when they're with you in this journey. And so the first step is really all about thinking about that. How is it that you want to feel? How is it that you want your team to feel? And how is it that you want your customers to feel? Instead of starting with the what. It's really interesting. A couple weekends ago, I was at this event called the Wisdom 2.0, The Shift, Aligning Your Life with Purpose. And actually, I have a friend in the room who was there with me. And what was interesting is that there's a room full of people who want to align their life with their purpose. And the leader of the workshop led people through a visualization exercise, not unlike the one we did this morning. And one of the questions he asked was, what would it be like? What would it feel like to be aligned with your purpose? And he had people sit with that for a little bit. Now what was interesting is that later on in the Q&A, a woman raised her hand and asked, so I'm wondering, did I miss something? Like you talked about how we want to feel when we're aligned with our purpose, but you didn't really tell us what is our purpose or how to articulate what our purpose is. Did I miss a step? And that's interesting because that gets at one of the myths that we so internally feel, that we have to figure out the what before we can figure out how we want to feel. When in actuality, it's the other way around. I mean, I'm glad that one of the prior speakers asked people to think about, like, why is it that you do whatever it is you do? And no one mentioned money, right? Because money is a means to an end. Ultimately, whatever your passion is, whatever it is that you want to do, is a means to feeling a certain way. I do the work that I do because I want to feel like I've helped make a change in someone else's life. Some people do the work that they do because they want to feel like they've resolved an injustice that exists in this world. So start with what it is that you want to feel. And then you can backwards map to the what will get you there. And so that's actually the second step. The first step is to start with how is it that you want to feel? How is it that you want your team to feel? And how is it that you want customers to feel? And once you have that, backwards map to the what. Raise your hand if you're familiar with lean startup principles. Yes. This is why I love being in a room full of entrepreneurial women, because that's more familiar to you than some of the other audiences I speak to. So one of the premises of lean startup principles is really to ask the customer first, right? What is it that they want? And as you're doing user interviews, often the types of questions that you ask is not necessarily, hi, would you like this thing that I have that's going to solve all this stuff? That's not actually the first question you ask. First question you ask after getting to know them is actually, what is the biggest challenge you're facing within this realm right now? Or what is it that's keeping you up at night? What are your biggest pet peeves that you wish you could solve? And what's interesting about those questions is that they're all stemming from an initial feeling. What is the biggest challenge that you want to solve? It comes from a feeling of unresolved. What is it that's keeping you up at night? It's all about stress and anxiety. Or what is the biggest pet peeve that you want to solve? It comes from a feeling of frustration. So once you've understood what it is that you want your team, yourself, your customers to feel, then you can backwards map to the what. Because if you ask them, they'll tell you. And so I'd love I know we have a lot of talking today, but sometimes in these environments it can be hard to take a break and really digest things. So I'd love for everyone to take a minute and just jot down, what are those things that you feel when you're living your passion? What is it that you want your team to feel when they're working with you? What is it that you want your customers to feel when they're engaging with your product or service? And I'll go ahead and give you a minute to just brainstorm. And then I want you to find a partner, can be different from the ones earlier, and I want you to go ahead and share. I'll give you 30 more seconds to just brainstorm on this. Ten more seconds to wrap up your thoughts, and then go ahead and find a partner to share. You'll have a minute each. So, partner one, go ahead and take a few moments to wrap up your thoughts, and then be sure to share. Let's switch to another person. If you haven't already, go ahead and make sure that you're switching partners so that partner 2 can share.
It's like a theory. And I really liked it because it had to do with like orientation. So like your relationship to desk.
And then partner 2, go ahead and wrap up our thoughts.
Your relationship to how people, your relationship to yourself. What is your relationship to what is right for you? And that's what I really liked about it. And I've been trying to like incorporate that into my lifestyle because I feel as though it's been very effective
And so I'd love to hear from the audience, what are some of the things that you feel when you're aligned with your passion? Impactful. What else do you feel when you're aligned with your passion?
In flow.
In flow.
Compassion.
Drive.
Compassion.
Compassion.
Grounded. Alive.
Alive. Grounded.
Energized.
Energized.
Expansive.
Expansive.
Worthy.
Worthy.
Creative.
Boundless. Content. Can people feel the connection to these words, these emotions? It's much easier to connect to those feelings than sometimes the what. And so what are the things that you want the people on your team to feel when they're working with you?
Encouraged.
Encouraged.
Inspired.
Successful. Can just be possible.
Dedicated.
Inspired.
Dedication.
Dedication.
Hope. Did someone say taken care of?
Taken care of.
Invested.
Invested.
Valued.
Valued.
Safe.
Safe.
Gratified.
Gratified. Proud.
Excited.
Excited. Sexy. And how about your customers? How is it that you want your customers to feel when they're engaging with your product or service?
Taken care of.
Confident. Delighted.
Trusting.
Trusting.
Happy.
Astounded. Happy.
You take them to a new place.
Taking them to a new place. Great.
Clear.
Surprised. Clear.
Engaged.
Engaged.
Chaotic.
Chaotic?
Yeah.
All right. And so, like, I love this exercise because after doing this, even though you may not have known what the what was that was driving all of these things, you can connect to that feeling. And so really, in building a tribe, it is about starting with the feeling that you want to feel, that you want your team to feel, that your customer is, or that you want your customer to feel. And then mapping back to the what. And then the final step is really weaving, I couldn't figure out a better phrase for this, but weaving together the whats. It's interesting because Tony Hsieh built an entire company on this. He wanted himself, his team, and his customers to feel happy. Now for each of those groups, the what, like what would make customers happy or delighted, or what would make his team happy, are somewhat different, because they're different people, but there is still a way to weave them all together into a business model that works. And ultimately, that's what it's about. Starting with a feeling, backwards mapping to the what for all of your stakeholders, and weaving that all together. Because, for example, maybe when you're aligned with your purpose, you want to feel connected to a greater cause. And maybe that's what you want your team to feel as well. But maybe for you, being connected to a greater cause is, being able to articulate like the change that you are making in the world. But for your team, feeling connected to a greater cause may simply be working with amazing people and feeling valued in that connection. Even though those what's are different, they can still be woven together in how you run your company and how you engage customers. And so the last thing I want to leave you with is an answer to the question that I asked at the beginning about like how can you be an inspiring leader? And really when it comes down to it, if you want to be an inspiring leader, be inspired. Embody that feeling that you want others to feel. And the people who want to feel that way too will be drawn to it.